You get home, close the door, and for a second, nothing happens. No one needs anything from you. No one is watching your face, reading your tone, waiting for your response. It's just the room, the low hum of something in the background, maybe your own breathing finally loud enough to notice. And the strange part is how quickly your body starts to loosen the moment the noise is gone. Not loud noise, people noise. The kind that keeps pressing on you even when nobody is saying anything important. The kind that leaves something behind, a residue, a tension, a feeling that you've been lightly handled all day by other people's moods, needs, energy, and expectations. Then the silence settles and it doesn't feel empty, it feels clean. That's what a lot of people misunderstand. When silence feels better than most people, it doesn't always mean you're antisocial. It doesn't always mean you're cold, bitter, or detached. It doesn't mean you hate connection. Sometimes it just means silence is the only place where you stop being shaped by other people's presence. Because being around people, even decent people, usually costs more than anyone sees. You adjust, you read the room, you soften your expression, you manage your tone. You decide how much of yourself is safe, useful, or easy to show. You leave certain thoughts unsaid because they would take too long to explain. You hide certain moods because they would make the interaction heavier. You keep things moving. You stay socially readable. And after a while, that constant adjustment wears something down in you. Not dramatically, quietly. So quietly that from the outside, you can still look completely normal. You can still talk, laugh, respond, be polite, be present. But inside, you've started associating people with effort, not because people are evil, because contact rarely lets you fully drop your guard. Silence does. Silence doesn't need your face to look okay. It doesn't need your voice to sound warm enough. It doesn't need your attention, your reaction, or your availability. It doesn't ask you to explain your mood. It doesn't make you keep the atmosphere comfortable. It leaves you alone. And for some adults, being left alone starts to feel better than almost anything. That can sound bleak when you say it out loud. Like something must be wrong. Like maybe you've become too distant from life. But the truth is often simpler than that. A lot of people don't love silence because they're empty. They love it because it's the only thing that doesn't take from them. That's why silence and loneliness are not the same thing. Loneliness feels like something missing. Silence, when you really need it, feels like something intrusive has finally stopped. It feels like the pressure has backed off just enough for you to hear yourself again. And a lot of adults spend years confusing the two. They think, I should want more people around. I should feel healthier when I'm included. I should miss company more than this. But what if the problem isn't that you love silence too much? What if too much of your experience with people has felt crowded, shallow, demanding, or emotionally expensive? Then, of course, silence feels better. It's simple. There's nothing to decode. No half-fake conversation. No subtle pressure to stay engaged. No need to react on time. No need to manage someone else's rhythm. No need to participate in an interaction that barely touches anything real. For some people, this starts with overstimulation. Too much work, too many messages, too many little interactions spread across the day, a coworker hovering, a group chat you don't want to open, a family member calling at the wrong time, someone being friendly when you don't have the energy to be received. None of it sounds severe on its own, but stacked together, it creates a life where your mind never fully lands. Silence becomes the only place where there's no incoming, no new tone to read. No need to answer, no personality pressing against yours, no emotional bill attached to the moment. For other people, it goes deeper than overload. Sometimes silence feels better than people because silence feels safer. People interrupt your mood. They misunderstand you. They ask questions you don't want to answer. They say things that sound small but stay in your head all night. Even kind people can pull on you in ways they don't realize. They want warmth, attention, responsiveness, reassurance, not because they're bad, but because that's what being around people often involves. Silence doesn't intrude. It doesn't misread you. It doesn't act entitled to your energy. And if you grew up in an environment where closeness came mixed with criticism, tension, guilt, or unpredictability, that matters even more. Because then silence may have been the only thing that ever felt clean. No pressure, no confusion, no emotional crossfire, just a pause in which nothing could get into you. So now, as an adult, it makes sense that silence still feels better. Not because you don't need people, because some part of you still experiences people as impact. Even good impact is still impact. That's why you can spend time with perfectly decent people and still come away drained. Not because anything terrible happened, just because another person's presence is not neutral when your system is already carrying too much. There's another reason silence can feel better than most people. Silence doesn't pretend. A lot of social interaction does, not always in some fake or malicious way, just in the normal human way. People skim the surface. They ask how you are without really wanting the real answer. They fill space because quiet makes them uncomfortable. They say the socially acceptable version of what they mean. They want connection, but only in forms that stay light, manageable, and easy. And if you're someone who doesn't speak just to fill the air, that gets tiring fast. You sit through another conversation that keeps moving without landing anywhere real, and something in you starts pulling back. You answer, nod, do your part. But inwardly, you're already moving toward silence. Because silence may be empty, but at least it's honest. It doesn't fake intimacy. It doesn't dress up distance as connection. It doesn't ask you to pretend that proximity automatically means closeness. A lot of adults are not starving for more conversation. They're starving for less false contact. And when that's the real hunger, silence will absolutely feel better than most people. Of course, there's nuance here. Sometimes silence feels better because it restores you. Because your life has been too loud, too crowded, too emotionally porous, and quiet is how you come back to yourself. But sometimes silence feels better because it protects you from the mess of being known. That matters too. Because silence can become more than relief. It can become control. No one can disappoint you there. No one can ask too much. No one can touch the parts of you that feel hard to explain. That version of silence feels good, but it can also hide things. Not everything you call peace is peace. Sometimes it's just the absence of friction. And the absence of friction can be seductive, especially when you're tired. It can make real connection feel worse than it actually is, simply because real connection has texture. It has misunderstandings, timing issues, moods, repetition, needs, and imperfection. Silence has none of that, so the point is not to shame your need for quiet, and it's not to force yourself into more social energy than you actually have. It's to be honest about what silence is doing for you. Is it restoring you, or is it helping you disappear? For a lot of adults, the answer is both. Silence heals them, and it hides them. That's why this pattern feels so complicated, because the comfort is real. But underneath it, there's often grief too. Grief that being around people so often feels like work instead of rest. Grief that contact has become associated with performance. Grief that peace is easier to find in an empty room than in another person. That's a hard thing to admit. But the real issue usually isn't silence. It's that most people haven't felt like peace. If being around others has too often meant pressure, editing, overstimulation, disappointment, shallow contact, or subtle self-abandonment, then of course silence wins. It wins easily. It asks nothing. It leaves no residue. It doesn't follow you home. That may be the clearest way to say it. Silence feels better than most people because silence doesn't stay inside you after it's over. A forced conversation does. A needy tone does. A room where you had to be the acceptable version of yourself does. That residue adds up. And after enough of it, silence starts feeling less like nothing and more like the only clean place left. Still, not every person feels worse than silence. Just most of them when you're tired enough. And that distinction matters, because maybe what you're really looking for is not less connection. Maybe you're looking for contact that feels as clean as silence. Someone whose presence doesn't crowd you. Someone who doesn't force language when quiet would do. Someone who doesn't make you perform yourself just to stay close. Those people exist, not many, but enough. And until then, it makes sense that silence feels better than most people, because silence has never asked you to become someone else just to survive the moment. If this felt familiar, tell me in the comments what silence gives you that people usually don't. And if you want more quiet, honest scripts like this about the patterns most people live with but rarely say out loud, subscribe.